Ladies and gentlemen, this is very, very interesting. This is from John Solomon. Breaking: Mark Meadows preparing referral asking IG to investigate FBI and Mueller's handling of Manafort warrants, contacts and media, and reliance on suspect ledger evidence. Just updated this story. Okay, so John Solomon wrote earlier today, there is now compelling evidence the two main documents the FBI used to justify investigating the Trump campaign, the Manafort ledger and the Steele Dossier, were suspect and contain inaccurate information. Well, the Steele Dossier we know is complete nonsense, purchased by Clinton, and the FBI was warned. FBI warned early and often that Manafort's black ledger might be fake, used it anyway in search warrant request. They not only obtained a Carter Page warrant for surveillance, the FBI used as in addition to using the Steele Dossier to set up and frame Carter Page, they used the Steele Dossier to go after Manafort to get a search warrant. Now, this is really interesting. When you talk to Democrats and you say, "Well, look, there were endless examples of illegal activity, unlawful activity, unethical activity when it came to setting up and framing Trump," their initial response is, "Well, there was nothing unlawful. Everything was above board. Nobody committed any crimes." It's just like the imbeciles who try to critique me, like, Janet Goodman still thinks that the Clinton and people around her will be indicted. Did they commit crimes? Oh, it doesn't matter. Did they commit crimes, imbecile? Yes or no? Oh, yeah, the answer is yes. So the thing is, they're very happy setting up people who didn't commit crimes. Carter Page, George Papadopoulos, Michael Flynn, they didn't commit any crimes. And sorry, lying to Peter Strzok shouldn't be considered a crime at all. Peter Strzok was kicked out, fired from the FBI, and literally stated, "We will stop Trump." If the reverse were true and an FBI agent said, "We will stop Clinton," oh my God, you'd never hear the end of it. But let's listen to this. FBI used documents to deceive judges to get search warrants. They used documents to deceive judges to get a Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act warrant. They hid behind protocol. They utilized deception. They utilized opposition research from foreign sources purchased by Madam Cyberhack, the Golden Muumuu, who's running again. And I love people who critique me. They're like, I'm not talking about my channel. I'm not talking about independents or conservatives. I'm talking about people on the left still. When she runs, it is going to be so lovely. Because just the mere fact, just hearing that to the left, they think that they're like, all grown up now and they have their own political party. Yay. No, wrong. Just like Trump during the debates. Wrong. You don't have a political party on the left. And the horror, the shocking surprise of having Madam Cyberhack, the Golden Muumuu, run again will vindicate everything I've ever been saying, especially about the Golden Muumuu and her worshippers. But anyway, when the final chapter of the Russia collusion, this is John Solomon, who is one of the, if not at the forefront of all of this from a journalistic perspective. He's one of the great journalists regarding all of this. I tip my hat to him and Sarah Carter and Kimberly Strassel. They are just absolutely wonderful. But he is, because I actually used to be a contributor at The Hill, until I think perhaps a former Salon editor had something to do with that. Anyway, FBI warned early and often that Manafort file might be fake, used it anyway. When the final chapter of the Russia collusion caper is written, it's likely two seminal documents the FBI used to justify investigating Donald Trump's 2016 campaign will turn out to be bunk. And the behavior of FBI agents and federal prosecutors who promoted the faulty evidence may disturb us more than we know. Look, when I read this to you and when I tell you this, just forget about trying to convince people with TDS, Trump derangement. Forget, and I'm coming out with a website in a couple of months. It's taking a little longer than expected, but that'll help you defeat any debate with a liberal or progressive regarding a whole bunch of issues. especially TDS, issues related to TDS, which you're seeing now AOC and even Bernie. Oh my God, Bernie has completely lost it. He might as well just, instead of Bernie Sanders, his name should be changed to Tool of the Democratic Party. Just complete another tool. I mean, forget about it. Look, that's a whole other story. Forget about convincing them that FBI agents and people at the Justice Department under President Obama's administration, people at the intelligence community, forget about convincing anyone who doesn't like Trump that they committed crimes. Don't do it because they don't care. So when people like go after me like, he still thinks that people can get indicted. It's like, well, they don't care that people committed crimes. They also don't care that that Trump didn't commit crimes. They're like, well, he had to have. He's so, like, the media is bringing this up all the time. Well, yeah, the media has one singular agenda. It's taking down President Trump. Let's listen. Let's read this. The Christopher Steele Dossier has received enormous attention, and the more scrutiny it receives, the more truthfulness wanes. There's nothing truthful in the Steele Dossier. I've explained this endlessly. The Steele Dossier makes categorical statements that are grandiose fantasy. Trump worked with Manafort and Carter Page and Papadopoulos and Flynn alongside Russian intelligence agents to hack the DNC, to foment Facebook ads, to all these things. Never happened. It's different from, well, it says Russia interfered. Well, we don't even know if Russia interfered, number one. CrowdStrike, we just found out, didn't even give its assessment to the U.S. government. They gave it to the DNC. So we have no clue what happened. But we don't know how many votes were altered in swing states. We have no clue which Facebook ads made the most impact, if any, which likely none of them. A Buff Bernard coloring book did not make any impact on anything. And here, so the first Christopher Steele dossier has received enormous attention, and the more scrutiny it receives, the more truthfulness wanes. Its credibility has declined so much that many now openly question how the FBI used it to support a surveillance warrant against the Trump campaign in October 2016. What they did was simply utilize politicized bureaucracy. That's all they did. That's all they did. And look, if at work, go to work tomorrow. Okay, or if you've worked in corporations, you know this is possible. You know, your manager, the middle manager, someone on your team working on a project. I mean, you could get framed and set up in a heartbeat in any office, in any corporation, in any company in the world and in the country. It is just the way it is. In the military, any place where there's a bureaucracy, at a high school, at a college, university, any place where there's a bureaucracy, bad people can utilize their post, utilize their power, their momentary, fleeting, sense of authority or entitlement, utilizing their post, their title, their shiny desk at that moment in time to hurt you. They can say, I've been told from a number of people that you are doing something bad. And then if you say, well, I want to know who these people are, that person either then backtracks or doubles down. And if they double down, and then you suddenly get fired or you suddenly get demoted because of gossip or hearsay, you could sue. Okay, that's a whole mess right there, but that's the way, or you just have to deal with it. But that's the way people can utilize their post. Happens sometimes with certain corrupt police officers. Happens sometimes with people who are corrupt, whether they're a police officer, whether a university professor or university administration, whatever. Now we see it with the FBI, and we've seen it with the United States government and every government throughout history. The Dreyfus Affair in France. We've seen this throughout history where people get set up and framed because of corrupt officials who utilize their influence and their power to deceive, utilizing bureaucracy in order to deceive and harm political opponents or anyone they want. Okay, let's continue. At its best, the Steele Dossier is an unverified and salacious document. So, Political research memo funded by Trump's Democratic rivals. At worst, it may be Russian disinformation worthy of the garbage label given to it by esteemed reporter Bob Woodward. The second document, known as the Black Cash Ledger, remarkably has escaped the same scrutiny, even though its emergence in Ukraine in the summer of 2016 forced Paul Manafort to resign as Trump's campaign chairman and eventually face U.S. indictment. Now, like I state earlier today in my segment, he should never have been indicted for anything. The only reason he was indicted is because they needed to find someone who had committed a crime. But it had nothing, his criminal acts, had nothing to do with Trump, had nothing to do with any collusion with Russia, had nothing to do with the Mueller probe. But what Rosenstein did when he set up the Mueller probe was said, well, anything relating to Mueller's investigation. So the rebuttal is, well, they got a blue dress from Whitewater. Okay. Then you have to say, well, was that the difference there is that President Clinton actually lied. Bubba Bill actually did something he shouldn't have done in the Oval Office. That was something he did. Okay. Whitewater was tied directly to Bill and Hillary. Okay, the blue dress, well, we don't have to get into how, I don't even want you to get into how I was tied to the blue dress. Let's just say the dry cleaners didn't work that day. So you're talking about apples and oranges. With Trump, they had nothing on Trump. They had to set him up using fake documents purchased by his direct political rival. They went after their political rivals, and they picked Manafort in large part, very likely because whether it was Tony Podesta, Clinton's campaign manager's brother, who was actually working with Manafort and Gates, and should have been indicted under the same for the same crimes that Manafort was indicted for, but you have Manafort engaging in activity that Democrats engaged in as well. Democrats, of course, circumvented any scrutiny from Mueller. But you have information from the Ukraine that was unlawfully obtained. There's now a probe in the Ukraine to see how the Clinton campaign managed to get dirt on Manafort. They actually tried to get dirt on Manafort. And they did. So they probably found out that, hey, you know what? Get him for certain shady activities, bank records, 2005 and 6 and then 2014 and all of these things. So they got him on crimes that had absolutely nothing to do with collusion. But it's different from the blue dress and Monica and Bubba Bill, because that all had to do with the president. This had to do with Manafort, nothing to do with Trump, and Manafort's crimes had nothing to do with the Mueller investigation, and the only reason they were able to obtain a search warrant on Manafort and start investigating him and go after all of his and wiretap his phones is because they got an unlawful warrant, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act warrant on Carter Page, and an unlawful warrant, a search warrant, for Manafort. They even got information from the media. That was a story not long ago. I can get to that a little later, but here, there's one problem. Okay, so in the search warrant affidavits, the FBI portrayed the ledger as one reason it resurrected a criminal case against Manafort that was dropped in 2014. So there was a criminal case dropped in 2014 and needed search warrants in 2017 for bank records to prove he worked for the Russia-backed Party of Regions in Ukraine. There's one problem. The FBI's public reliance on the ledger came months after the feds were warned repeatedly that the document couldn't be trusted and likely was fake, according to documents and more than a dozen interviews with knowledgeable sources. For example, Ukraine's top anti-corruption prosecutor, Nazar Kolodnitsky, told John Solomon he was warned. The United States law enforcement liaison and multiple FBI agents, He was warned the United States law enforcement liaison and multiple FBI agents in late summer 2016 that Ukrainian authorities who recovered the ledger believed it was likely a fraud. They got dirt from Manafort from the Ukraine. It was a ledger that was fraudulent. They used a Steele Dossier that was fraudulent. And guess who Manafort was working with? The brother of Clinton's campaign chairman. Gee, why isn't that guy possibly going to Rikers? Because he's a Democrat. Because miraculously, the Mueller probe never went after Democrats. Gee, isn't that interesting? Not one investigation into Democrats who utilized, let's say, a Steele Dossier with Russian sources. One active Russian intelligence official. So Mueller was tasked with election interference from Russia. Clinton purchases a dossier that was compiled with help from Russian sources. I guess that's off limits for Mueller, I guess. Of course it was. It was not to be considered a document of Manafort. It was not authentic, and at the time it should not be used in any way to bring accusations against anyone. Kolodnitsky said, recalling what he told FBI agents. The FBI was warned not only by Ukraine, but also by the Justice Department under Bruce Orr. But that's a whole interesting one, because Bruce Orr, his wife, worked for Fusion GPS, and what he probably did was like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Gee, we can't verify this. You probably don't want to use this, but if you want to use it, go ahead. That type of thing. So, likewise, Manafort's Ukrainian business partner, and Bruce Orr met with Christopher Steele numerous times. Christopher Steele had contacts at the State Department. I mean, President Obama's administration was actively working with Russian sources. With foreign sources and then Russian sources through Christopher Steele. Actively. Likewise, Manafort's Ukrainian business partner, Konstantin Kilimnik, a regular informer for the State Department, told the U.S. government almost immediately. The New York Times wrote about the ledger in August 2016 that the document was probably fake. When the New York Times writes about something, you have BuzzFeed, you have the New York Times, you have the Washington Post. They're not interested in accuracy. Secret ledger in Ukraine lists cash for Donald Trump's campaign chief. Oh my God. August 14, 2016. That's interesting. So this is dirt on Manafort from the Ukraine. That Ukrainian's top anti-corruption official said, hey, don't use this. New York Times, let's publish this. August 14, 2016. The New York Times is a DNC newsletter, just like the Washington Post is. Manafort was the first person they could take down. And the crimes they got him under, I believe it was Alan Dershowitz, the sentence that he got, 7.5 years, that usually is not the sentence you get. Usually it's like 1 year, 2 years maximum. So they tried to make an example out of him simply as a public relations stunt. It's the most, and if I was Trump, I would just, I would next week pardon everyone, and then as we find out, because look, at the end of the day, Democrats will never admit that they committed crimes. They'll never admit they committed crimes. So that's like when people get on me, they're like, well, you think that Clinton will eventually get indicted? Yeah, I think eventually. I never said imminent. I haven't said imminent in a while. Okay, when I thought it was imminent, now I'm saying it inevitably and eventually. Okay, you can't commit crimes. But when people get on me like, he thinks Hillary is going to go, did she commit crimes? Oh, well, that's not the point. Yeah, it is the point. Did Andrew McCabe commit crimes? He lied it 3 times under oath. Did James Baker commit crimes? He's under criminal investigation. So is Andrew McCabe. Comey, the litany of things, committed perjury, leaked classified information. So did they commit crimes? Yes or no? Always get people who try to disparage you based on, because they're like complete zombies. MSNBC, CNN, liberal media zombies. They don't realize it. Even the ones who think that, I'm independent. Yeah, well, you know what? If you hate Trump that much, or if you dislike Trump that much, you're probably believing a bunch of nonsense. And you're probably overlooking the real crimes committed by the left, by people beholden to Clinton, like Comey, Strzok, McCabe, Clapper, Brennan, all of them. But they utilized their post through the media. So Manafort could not have possibly taken large amounts of cash across 3 borders. It was always a different arrangement. Payments were in wire transfer to his companies. Kalimnik wrote, okay, so Special Counsel Robert Mueller's team and FBI were given copies of Kalimnik's warnings, according to these sources. But see, the interesting thing is you had 2 people. You had 2 people that were actually given the Steele Dossier, allowed to look at the Steele Dossier. 2 people in Mueller's team of attorneys. They knew the Steele Dossier was nonsense, but, quote, so essentially the FBI cited a leak that the government had facilitated and then used it to support the Ledger evidence, even though it had been clearly warned about the document. Second, the FBI was told the Ledger claimed to show cash payments to Manafort when, in fact, agents had been told since 2014 that Manafort received money only by wire transfer, mostly routed through the island of Cyprus. Okay. During the 2014 investigation, Manafort and his partner Richard Gates voluntarily identified for FBI tens of millions of dollars they received from Ukrainian and Russian sources, and the shell companies and banks that wired the money. Gee, I wonder why in 2014 they weren't indicted. Maybe, just maybe, the President Obama's administration was like, yeah, we'll just wait. We'll wait till the insurance policy kicks in. Gates stated the amounts they received. Okay, so liberal law professor Alan Dershowitz said FBI affidavits almost never cite news articles as evidence, which the FBI under Comey always did. They are supposed to cite the primary evidence and not secondary evidence. It sounds to me like a fraud on the court, possibly a willful and deliberate fraud that should have consequences for both the court and the attorney's bar. Representative Mark Meadows, a senior Republican on the House Government Oversight and Reform Committee, told John Solomon Wednesday night he is asking the Justice Department Inspector General to investigate the FBI and prosecutors' handling of the Manafort warrants. Okay, so including any media links and evidence that the government knew the ledger was potentially unreliable and suspect evidence. The Inspector General is now going to investigate this. Look, when people say the IG report's going to be nothing, it's not going to work out, yeah, the IG report's probably going to be, well, they did a lot of bad things, but we don't know what was in their heart. Doesn't matter. The main thing is list the things they did so John Durham and William Barr can take action. That's what needs to take place. William Barr must take action. He has been already. I mean, they can't stand him. They're petrified of him. Pelosi is like, yeah, he's the most dangerous person ever. Just the other day or yesterday. So, Wednesday night, he's Justice Department Inspector General to investigate the FBI and prosecutors' handling of the Manafort warrants. So this is big. The FBI, not only are they being investigated for their use of the Steele Dossier against Carter Page, they're also being investigated, Comey, Strzok, McCabe, Clapper, Brennan, all of them. Well, Comey, Strzok, and McCabe, for sure, and then everyone under them, regarding their investigation of Paul Manafort. So you have 2 people, 2 big fish regarding in the Mueller probe, Manafort and Carter Page, that were supposed to be these big links to Russia, had nothing to do with collusion. By the way, why is it that when they indicted Russian intelligence officers, and I'm telling you, one of my amazing subscribers brought this to my attention, why is it when they indicted 12 Russian intelligence officers, there were no American co-conspirators? And so I always brought up the fact that, yeah, they utilized Company 1. Company 1 is CrowdStrike. We have no clue if CrowdStrike's information is accurate. But why are there no co-conspirators? I thought that the indictment and, they had all the goods on these Russian intel officers who hacked the DNC. And then it goes on or about June 2016, the DNC was infiltrated by this guy and that guy and this guy. How did they know? The United States government never looked at the DNC servers. They're relying literally on a tech firm that was outsourced by Democrats. So you have the ledger with Manafort, a fraud. You have the Steele Dossier, a fraud. You have the analysis of data of the DNC servers that says, the Russians entered on this date, a fraud. Alexander Downer, his third party, his gossip, fraudulent. Joseph Mifsud, a complete fraud in every way. He's tied to Western intelligence, numerous ties. Has nothing to do with the Kremlin. So, I mean, how did they even get this? How on earth did they get this? How on earth did they start this nonsense? How on earth did they start this nonsense? It's like unbelievable. I mean, give me your thoughts below. It is just really unbelievable how it's unbelievable how they utilize their posts, they utilize their titles, they utilize what they did was to defraud the United States of America. 18371, the statute that I talk about in my Federalist article. They utilize that information to defraud the United States of America, the people of the United States of America. Give me your thoughts below. If you want to support my voice long term, my Patreon is below. Your support is greatly appreciated. It's in the pinned comment. And check out my writing that was shared by Rush Limbaugh. That's in the pinned comment as well. Thank you.